Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories. Ed, coming off of a big UFC pay-per-view with an unexpected finish to the average.
Mm.
Um, Good card top to bottom, honestly.
Yeah.
Enjoyed the pay-per-view, and I don't know if there's anything specifically that jumps out at you, or if you just want to kind of work our way up some of the results. But yeah, good UFC 292 pay per view.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we should just talk about what everyone's talking about, the new champion that we have in Sean O'Malley. I even I have to catch myself because we've talked about him a few times on this podcast. We talked about his gimmick with the hair and the weed and the Twitch and the influencer shit or whatever the fuck that's supposed to be now. How that's kind of like what makes us old heads not like. Not I don't want to say not like him, because every time we do talk about him, I always catch myself and say he's a good martial artist, and I think that's what we all forgot when, especially the odds makers, looking at it. Now because of the fandom and the machine that the UFC fandom creates now. Just because he talked about how he was practicing that counter right hand, in the cage as Sterling was making his way in, and that's what he caught him with. Now you're seeing the breakdowns and the highlights and the slow mo stuff. Even guys that make their money off of doing odds, like Luca Fury pointed out, like it's just now we're gonna have that for 2 weeks of O'Malley and his counter right, and the clips of comparing him to Conor McGregor, this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, all that showmanship that he does online with the smoking weed and stuff. He camouflages very well that he's a really good martial artist that prepares well. I always bring it up. I brought it up last night talking with the guys that I train with at my gym when we were talking about the fight. The very first Fight Pass Invitational, he was on one of the teams, and he made it to like the semifinals or whatever. Like, he showed his ground prowess. So people were talking about if Sterling took his back, it would have been the end, which I still believe Sterling has the advantage on the ground over him, maybe. But once again, he's got that wiry ectomorphic frame, and just I know he's a young kid, and he's got that personality that the youngsters seem to love and us old heads seem to hate. But at the end of the day, he's a well-rounded martial artist, and got to take your hat off to the kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've never, as much as we've talked about the guy over the years. I mean, we've been doing this podcast since he started on the Contender Series.
Since he was in LFA, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've always acknowledged that he's a fun, exciting fighter to watch. He's got mad skills. Like you said, he competed on Quintet, submitted a couple guys. Um, he competed as the UFC team. I think he beat the Pride team, maybe, because I think he submitted Sakuraba, if I remember correctly, or one of those guys. But yeah, I mean, we've never questioned his skills, but and his act, we've obviously, like you said, is not necessarily always our cup of tea. I think McGregor's a fair comparison in a sense. I mean, he doesn't have a country behind him like that pushed McGregor, and I feel like his level of competition is a little stiffer than McGregor up till the title fight. I mean, he did beat Peter Yan. He beat a Pedro Munoz, a very competitive top 10 Pedro Munoz. And then obviously he just took out Sterling, who was on an incredible run. You know, I think his run comes to an end when he fights a wrestler who wants to wrestle. And I think that's simply what will happen, whether it's Nurmagomedov or it's one of those, it's a rematch with Sterling. I mean, keep in mind that first round with Sterling, each of those guys threw like 6-8 punches.
Yeah,
like there was nothing there, so he might have given up. He might have given up the round when they were dry and he had a chance to grab him and really work his game plan.
They said that he was 10-9. That first round was 10-9 Sterling. So you're right about that. But as to your point about fighting a wrestler, the guy that wants to fight him in December now is his Sterling's teammate, who was ranked up there and didn't want to fight Sterling in the same division, Merab Dvalishvili. And not for nothing, dude, but like that's actually the fight I think they should make. I know Sterling wants an immediate rematch. I think it's better for him to just sit back and reassess, what happened and stuff like that. He admitted too that it's all the hype and stuff like this is why fighters hate it. And I'm going to touch on that too when we talk about the PFL semifinals that I was covering last week. That the stuff that the fighters have to do, their real job is for them to focus on fighting and being the best martial artists they can be. But because of the nature of the business and how money is made and their brand, so personal branding and all that, they have to do all these other things like the media and all, and find a gimmick that works or what have you. And part of that is like the mental warfare when the matches are signing contracts are signed and they have to face each other. And even Sterling said he admitted that he kind of let all of that hype get to him, and that's kind of what threw him off of his game too. What's crazy about the finishing blow is like if you watch it when Sterling makes the mistake, you can see it in his face that he immediately realizes it because it's not a punch that he doesn't see coming. Which I'm on the side of the stoppage being a little early, but I don't fault Mark Goddard because I know he's a very good referee, and like our friend uh, Wheelock pointed out to us a couple of podcast episodes ago, the point of view of the officials is varying. It's not they're not seeing what we see at home. And when I put myself in Goddard's shoes and I see the replay what happened, from my point of view, it would look like Sterling's turning his back versus turtling up to go after his legs. You know, the other thing that Sterling admitted in the post-fight press conference was when they asked him if he knew where he was, he didn't know, and he said he just forgot. But I mean, no offense to the kid, but you probably forgot because this is the second time you've gotten your bell rung. Not as bad as when Marlon Moraes did it, but that stuff as Mr. McGracken's been posting on X a lot these days. That stuff builds up over time. So, um, I think he should take some time off, reassess. I mean, he's got good people around him, and I think I hope that's what he does anyway.
Yeah, I think the Dashvili fight makes sense, and also in the sense that you know Sterling and him are teammates,
Hmm.
as you mentioned. So like his plan was to win this fight and then get out of the way and let Dashvili eventually take the vacant title
Hmm.
fight and carry on as the champion of that division. Um, for the Serra Longo team,
Hmm.
um, and then obviously the loss throws a monkey wrench in that. You kind of I feel like you almost kind of give your teammate the opportunity because otherwise he's not going to get it. If you get a rematch and you win the title again, then you really guys can't be teammates anymore. You guys are going
Hmm.
to have to fight each other. You kind of are in a situation like that. Whereas if Dashvili wins the title, Sterling really could take two or three kind of quote unquote super fights even. Maybe try his hand up a division. Not against a Volkanovski, but maybe against a Holloway or something like that. Um, and test his skills up there, or just take a big fight, maybe a Peter Yan or something at the division he's in right now.
Hmm.
Um, I think Dashvili's a kryptonite for a lot of fighters. I
Hmm.
think I'm gonna pick, if that fight goes down, I'm gonna pick him to beat
Oh yeah.
O'Malley. I don't think the UFC wants that fight though because I think they want O'Malley to be champion,
Hmm.
and I think we might get kind of like the reverse Connor treatment in a sense where Connor kind of got the easy road to the title, if in a lot of people's opinions. And then he started fighting killers, obviously, when he became champion and beat some, and then he suffered his losses. Um, I think I don't know how quick they'll be ready to feed uh, O'Malley to Dashvili. I think they want to probably have a title run that lasts pay-per-view or two, maybe kind of get a feel for what
Hmm.
kind of draw he is, because there is potential at a superstar. If he stays out of trouble, if he doesn't say something incredibly stupid and get you know kicked off of social
Yeah.
media for something just idiotic, or get caught doing something idiotic, then he has potential for superstar. So I think they're kind of interested in that. Obviously, he's more superstar value on from the outside looking than Dashvili. No disrespect to Dashvili, but he's a grinder. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I don't know how many pay-per-views he's going to sell, but he very well might be the best, 135 fighter in the world. I mean, that's just that's just how it is. That's just the reality of the situation. I'd love to see that fight. I think that's the fight that makes the most sense. Um, Obviously, Cejudo's in the mix too. He's
Hmm.
coming off a loss. That's another one though. Like to me, that's almost the more likely fight because the UFC knows what they got with Cejudo.
Yeah.
If he beats O'Malley, they got somebody that they who has a legacy there, and they can continue to build off of it and promote. And the casual fan knows Henry Cejudo. So I think that's might be more realistic something if they try to do a quick turnaround like December. If we were
Hmm.
talking 6 months down the line, 8 months down the line, I could see the Dashvili thing unfolding. But if we're gonna do a quick turnaround, I mean, what does that put us in? August, September, October, like 4 months, three and a half, 4 months.
Yeah.
I think the Cejudo or the Sterling rematch makes more sense for the
Hmm.
UFC as far as trying to keep the money train going with O'Malley.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That's actually a really good assessment, especially like you said, the money train. They want someone that draws. The flip side is only because of the way I've seen him. Some of the things he's done on podcasts and stuff like that. One of the things that I could see O'Malley now being, since he is the A side now, making fights with him might be a little difficult, more difficult, just because now he knows he's a champ, he's holding the cards, and some of the stuff he said about management and UFC contracts, the stuff he said lately. So I wouldn't be surprised if he starts flexing for more money. I know when you win a title, and Chael Sonnen said this on his podcast a couple of years ago, around maybe the first year he started it. Like when someone wins a title, like that's when a new contract comes up for the fighter because now they're champion. All this stuff has to be discussed, and it's a new contract that they have to sign moving forward. That's what I remember from the gist of what was discussed on his podcast. Again, this was like 2016, I want to say 2017. Whether or not that's the case, who knows? But whatever, if it is the case, I could see O'Malley being a little bit more like guarded with what he does, and his likeness being used for stuff, and all the stuff that comes with being in business with the UFC. So I wouldn't be surprised if whatever fight is next for O'Malley doesn't happen till I mean, I'll be a little. I was gonna say International Fight Week 2024, but we'll say like maybe February, March if we see him again.
We'll see. Like you said, the December pay per view is kind of in limbo right now
Hmm.
because I don't think they're gonna. I don't think the McGregor fights with Chandler is gonna
You
happen.
don't
I
think
don't
he's gonna
think.
get an exemption?
No, I don't think the UFC can get away with it and save
Mm,
face. I think that I think you'll have a fighter revolt in a
mm,
sense. Um, and I don't. And you'll have a lot of fighters kind of following that track. And I mean, again, this is all because we don't know if they're contractors or employees. So there's like, if they're employees, you wouldn't be able to give special treatment per se. You'd have some rules, I think, that would kind of regulate how you treat your employees. There could be discriminations and stuff like that. Whereas if they're considered out contractors, maybe you're allowed to, favor one over the other, which is obviously what's happened over the
mm.
last, 2 decades of uh, of MMA fight. Post tournaments when there was no politics. It was just you fought and somebody walked away with the trophy at the end of the night. But yeah, no, I mean, all props to O'Malley, fun fighter to watch. The cool thing about him is you're not getting into a boring fight.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And at least it won't be from his side. He might fight somebody who drags him for 5 rounds, and we've seen that a million times with a million fighters. But he's gonna bring it. He's gonna be prepared. Um, and there's going to be some antics likely going into into the fight, which can be fun,
Yeah.
but also it just depends on how much it goes. we
Yeah.
both like we both like a little bit of shit talk, a little bit of especially if it's genuine. But um it just seems like some of it's just cheap. um you
Yeah,
know
like cheap and forced and just
yeah, you see
yeah,
some of it going on right now. I'm not even going to get into the fight, but some of it going down with the some of that other influencer stuff.
the Logan Paul and Dylan Dennis.
Yeah, whatever they got going on. I mean, that's not even Dylan Dennis
But
is
that's the thing.
an absolute joke.
But that's the thing. That's the thing about it, though. Like that they're facing off, and the biggest news that came out of the press conference from yesterday was John Fury going nuts. He's not
Yeah,
even fighting anybody,
and Mike Perry stepping in and getting the actual face off.
and that not for nothing. That's actually the fight that interests me. I'd rather see Mike
Well,
Perry
yeah,
versus Logan Paul.
Dylan. Are we being serious about Dylan Dennis? I mean, what did he fight once or twice in Bellator, and both of the times were fairly embarrassing fights. I mean, he fought jobbers and then I don't know, nothing impressive. There was never anything impressive. I've seen him grapple. I've never been impressed by anything I've ever seen by him. I watched Jake Shields beat him in grappling. I think in Polaris 4 or 5 years ago. Like it's just I just don't, I'm not interested in watching him win or anything like that. I mean, I might like to watch him get
This
blasted, but it
this
just I don't know where his boxing comes in. The striking's never been anything. I mean,
yeah,
Anthony Taylor, you know, clocked him up,
that's right.
outside out in the streets,
Like
So
hard,
yeah,
yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like it's. I don't understand how this is a thing. Even Dana White was trashing it last at the post fight press conference last Saturday for 292. But one thing I want to say about that is like I mean, a grappler versus someone that's boxed probably a little bit more than he has, and again, it's under boxing rules, so it's going to favor the person that's used to that competition set. Um, I'm not sure how Mike Perry wasn't the first guy to call, and the whole gimmick. There's actually one of the things Logan Paul's saying, like he doesn't think he's going to show up on fight night, and that's why Mike Perry is there. Like if that's a legitimate concern, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. But if it winds up being Mike Perry, like the anybody that's kind of looking down their nose at it now, you put Mike Perry's name on the other side of the marquee, now they're interested.
yeah,
So.
yeah. No, I mean, he's obviously the real fighter of all those
Mhm.
guys that we're talking about. He's the proven legit badass of all those guys.
Oh yeah.
So it's that. But getting back to 292, the co-main event, Weili Zhang. I mean,
Mm.
total domination over Amanda Lemos. Um, I mean, my only complaint was that she should have finished her probably in the first round. Kind of dragged it on. In my mind, she even finished her. It wasn't even until I was right now sitting here and double checking the results where I was like, oh, it went to the decision. Because in my mind it was such a dominating thing
Hmm.
that it was like one of those fights where 2 rounds is over, you kind of could turn away because
Yeah.
you knew who the winner was going to be. There was no, there was it
Well,
was
I
it
mean, there
was
there was in the first round there was the moments where she slapped on that choke.
That's true. The
The
guillotine.
yeah, and it was it was a little dangerous because her neck was a little cranked the first time it went on, but she kept going for it. But that was literally all she had going for it. And Weili Zhang just proved herself to be such a. I mean, she's just so well trained. It's crazy how good she is. I mean, um, I don't know, man. I don't see anybody beating her. I mean, I know Rose and her had what they have, but when Rose Namajunas is when she's dialed in, she's a threat, but she doesn't seem like she's dialed in. Ever since that Carla Esparza fight, just I don't think I don't think her heart's in it anymore. But yeah, no, the Weili Zhang, she's gonna hold that belt for a little while.
Yeah, I think so too. On the prelims, I don't know, was any there hasn't been I haven't sat and watched a fight that made me as uncomfortable and feeling weird as watching Brad Tavares, Chris Weidman. Obviously,
Oh,
I'm a huge Chris Weidman fan. He's from your
yeah.
neck of the woods up there. I mean, he's literally one of my favorite fighters ever, despite this
Hmm.
terrible, terrible run we've seen at the end. The joy and the entertainment he brought us on his way up was incredible. I mean,
Mm.
with his especially his first victory over Silva, that was to be in that crowd was something that was um, it was something that was crazy.
Yeah,
But
and his path to get to that fight with Anderson Silva, it was just something, it was like a freight train running through the division to get there, and it just everything is just so nuts. Like even when Rogan said it on the broadcast, it didn't even make sense to me until heard him. He was talking about the leg breaks. He was like, "There's four of them have happened in the UFC history, and two of them have involved Chris Weidman. That's nuts.
yeah,
That's just nuts."
no, it's just crazy when you think about how his career did. And they
Yeah.
even said it on the broadcast how it swung on a takedown
Mm-hmm.
attempt of or a kick, like
Mm-hmm.
a kicking attempt at Luke Rockhold. He went from a fight he was dominating to being mounted and
Mm-hmm.
finished. And then he went from dominating Yoel Romero to catching a flying knee in the last round to, to being in a 50-50 back and forth with Jacare and then taking a devastating knockout in the last round. That's around that. He's beaten Gastelum and and then it's just crazy. And then you had the terrible leg break,
Hmm.
which was a rematch over a guy he had beaten on the way up to get into the UFC and Uriah
Yeah.
Hall. Um, but just I mean, Tavares did what you do, you
Yeah.
know. But it's a harsh
It's what they
reality when
sign
your
up
game
for.
when your
Yeah.
when your game plan's to leg kick a guy whose leg snapped in half in his previous fight. I mean, as a viewer, man, that was hard to watch.
Yeah, it
That
was
was
hard to
hard to
watch, and,
watch.
and and then you could see it was affecting him early on. Like when he was going for the takedowns, he was going for the double leg, and Cormier in the commentary was talking about how he should be going for a single. If you watch the push off of that leg, the one that he broke, his toes are facing out, which I don't know if that was a result of already the damage he took from the leg kicks, or just the fact that there was some apprehension on his part because of the leg break. But you know, um, they asked Dana White his thoughts at the post fight press conference, and now everyone's already seen the clip. He was like, "I think he should retire. There's nothing left for him to do. He's done great things. I think he's still got a broadcast job with a Madison Square Garden network out here on the East Coast. So he's got work he can do, and his name alone, he can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, and people will still want to hear his expertise, hear him talk. It's just or help coach other guys in the Sarah Longo gym, which is super tight knit group. One thing I wanted to say, I shared the video from Sterling's loss. The guys with him in the locker room afterward, it was Longo, Mirab, and Ali Quinta, like just kind of sitting there with him while he was going through the motions of the loss, and it made me think about that quote about um, you know pay attention who's with you in your locker room, when not just when you win but when you lose. And you could tell, especially Mirab, you could tell Mirab, like that. That's I can relate to that because the guys in my gym are like that. For the personal stuff that happens in our lives. So I can relate to that. So and again, we had Ron on this podcast. So like there's like 6 degrees of separation from that gym and for the folks I train with. I'm always rooting for Sterling, even though the fucking guy doesn't remember me. But I'm always rooting for that kid and whatever Sterling and Weidman and all those guys. It's just I hope I hope he whatever he does, I hope he does well, and I hope the UFC takes care of him. And I know that's saying a lot these days, but he if anyone deserves to be taken care of, it's him.
No, I agree. I agree. A couple other results of note: the Ultimate Fighter finales took place. Kurt Hollabaugh picked up a bit of a
Oh
comeback
yeah, those fights were
win.
good. Yeah.
Nice triangle choke win over Austin Hubbard after losing the first round, and then Brad Katona and Cody Gibson put on Fight of
Hmm.
the Year candidate in a great back and forth war. Where, like I said, Katona picked up the decision. Um, but an awesome fight. Awesome fight. Both guys. I mean, okay, let's be serious here. There's obviously some glory in winning, but the fact that they announced a guy who lost in the first round of the show is fighting at September 16th UFC. Like they're
Hmm.
all gonna like these guys. It's cheap labor. So that there's kind of it kind of sucks. I mean, I'm glad these guys get the opportunity to continue their career and get other opportunities to fight, but as far as being the Super Bowl of MMA, if you're taking the eighth place finisher on the Ultimate Fighter, then what are I don't. It just doesn't sit right with me. It seems like it waters down, and it devalues what we're supposedly watching. Um,
Hmm.
but again, to win it, especially Katona winning it twice, says a lot, man. That's a lot of mental fortitude. You talk to people who've been on that show, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Hmm.
Nobody comes off that show and is like, I can't wait to go into seclusion again.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a bunch
Yeah.
of guys in a house with no outside. You know what I mean? Like it's usually pretty. It seems to be mentally, wearing. So the
Yeah.
fact he's
Yeah.
able to grind his way through it, be on a team with Chandler, who they obviously had some ups and downs. You never know how much of it is production. But then to kind of be fighting against like his coach and his team on the other side, and then eventually go over there and have them kind of coach him for his final two fights to the
Hmm.
championship. Is a pretty cool setup, despite obviously Team McGregor getting their butts kicked for the vast majority of the show. So,
Yeah.
but great fights, fun pay per view, new
Yeah.
champions. So,
Yeah.
I think Yeah, good event.
The new champion thing for any whether regardless of event, it's change. It freshens things up. Change is always good, especially if it's underdog change. So in that sense, as a fan, I get why folks are happy, especially. I mean, I know the sports books weren't happy because O'Malley was the underdog across the board, and a lot of people made a lot of money that night. I stayed away from it because I would have put money on Sterling anyway, and it looks like I would have lost it.
Speaking about spending money and getting out to fights, you made some money working this past Friday night, past what, Wednesday through Friday night
Yeah, well,
out in New
Wednesday.
York.
Yeah, so everybody actually right now, the main card's going to start right now on ESPN, ESPN Plus. The rest of the semifinals for PFL's 2023 season. The tonight's main event, Clay Collard versus Shane Burgos, which is kind of why we started recording early today, so I can get to watch that. I could have been there covering that, but I got to keep my priorities with the pod and everything going. Plus, I had some work just for Spectation Sports to do, but I covered
Wednesday
the
nights are tough too.
yeah.
I didn't even know it was happening tonight. I mean, that's one of the problems with
People
PFL.
are complaining.
Not to give them a quick jab before we kind of give them a little bit of praise,
Yeah,
but
well,
uh,
that's kind of what I wanted to get into. Like, so, I mean, we've taken quite a few jabs at the PFL and the way they advertise stuff. This past year, or pretty much after COVID. Um, but this is my first PFL event I've covered since before COVID because everyone that's followed me knows I've followed them. I've covered them, especially in the Garden when they're the World Series of Fighting, and they're rebranding to PFL. I've been to Washington D.C. to cover them, which is where their finals are this year, by the way, again at Anthem. And then just everything that they've done because the going back to it in Madison Square Garden in the theater again. Media day was Wednesday, weigh-ins and stuff were Thursday, and then obviously the event was last Friday. So I was there for all of that. One of the things I wanted to talk about because the video's on our YouTube channel, Olena Kolesnik or Kolesnik, I keep messing up her last name. On media day, she was funny, and I posted a clip of the funny stuff she said. But she said to us, and again, this was the Wednesday before she didn't make weight. She says, I wanna tell you all to fuck off right now because I'm trying to cut weight and I have to do this. And it's like this goes back to what I said what we were talking about before, all the stuff the fighters have to do instead of just focusing on what they have to do. They have to do all these other obligations. She didn't make weight. She had to forfeit 20% of her purse. Had she won, she would have still been able to advance according to the PFL rules, but we already saw what happened. Larissa Pacheco made short work of her in the first round. But I wanted to mention that because I actually, if you watch that video, I don't ask her any questions because when I heard that, I'm sensitive to what these fighters really want to do. So I just recorded her, and there's people that just ask questions so they could hear their own fucking voice that do media sometimes, but that's for another podcast. But I felt bad for her, and then that when that happened, I was just like, man, that it's a shame because that was her downfall to her losing her track to what the PFL resets every season for these fighters. And I was reminded of that covering the event last week, watching these semifinals, watching these fighters that nobody heard of now will have a chance to be millionaires in November. Renan Ferreira, nobody was talking about Renan Ferreira really until he knocked out Maurice Green as quickly as he did. Larissa Pacheco, before she was in the PFL, nobody was really talking about her. Now she's about to be a two-time champion in the PFL if she wins in November. And all these other fighters that kind of were considered B level wherever they came from. Now they're in the PFL and they're like names in the promotion. Clay Collard did it really good. He's fighting tonight, and he's fighting Shane Burgos, who, if you look at the history of Burgos advancing and who should have advanced, that's a whole other story. I would suggest you Google that to know what I'm talking about. But for the sake of time, Clay Collard said something to a friend of ours that's been on the podcast, Mike Pendleton, who interviewed him, and he said, I think it was Mike Pendleton. I'm not sure who did the interview, but he said, these guys from the UFC, they come in, they get paid more money than me, and I shut them all down. And he was referring to Anthony Pettis from last season and everyone he's beaten now. the fight between him and Shane Burgos tonight is going to be something you don't want to miss. Clay Collard, if you talk about the best boxing in MMA, like everyone likes to talk about Max Holloway, blah blah blah. I think it's Clay Collard. I've never seen someone that's actually boxed under Queensberry rules professionally, and then come back to the MMA and taken that level of boxing and transition it to mixed martial arts as well as Clay Collard has. So as much as Burgos is the local guy, I'm not going to be surprised if Collard beats him tonight. But I'm saying all that to say the platform and the format of the PFL, regardless of their pacing and their gimmicks that people like to shit on them about, the fighters seem to like it and respect it, and I feel like I forgot that because again I I wasn't covering them as much as I was before COVID, and having covered them again this past week reminded me of how good the format is. And I'm not gonna lie, if they do get into business with Bellator merge crossover, whatever they're supposed to do, I think some fun stuff could happen.
No, I mean it'll be a loaded roster. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
as loaded of a roster as ever been kind of in competition with the UFC uh, post Pride, um, or maybe Strike Force when it was at its absolute peak. But Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed the show. I don't catch all of them. I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch every single PFL
Mm-hmm.
show, but I watched it because you were there, and I enjoyed it. And the last two fights, you had two fairly devastating finishes, knockouts, which always, you know, from just be a bleed fan over here, something that's always fun to
Mm-hmm.
watch. But just out of
Well, I mean,
curiosity, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
we talk about fun fights to watch. I mean, the last showcase bout, you know, uh, PFL doesn't do prelims main card. It's showcase bouts, and then their seasonal format cards. Like those are all showcase bouts tonight, and then the main card would be the semifinals for the playoffs that they're doing. But the one before that, the ones for the event that I covered, Nathan Kelly and Damian Nelson. I mean, that fight went to a decision, but that fight was that was probably one of the most fun fights I've watched, since I've been watching the PFL in a while. That went to a decision. I like PFL when there's finishes, and all those semifinal bouts were finishes. But Nathan Kelly, man, out of the SB Gym in Ireland, that's a guy I think we got to keep an eye on because that was a really fun fight.
How many people were in the crowd? Was there a decent crowd, or was it? That was always been kind of one of the weaknesses, if I'm being honest, about PFL and
Well,
even World Series of Fighting.
yeah, I mean it's in the theater in Madison Square Garden, so it was full.
Was it full? Okay,
Yeah, it's a
so
Friday night. Friday night in New York
yeah. I mean, I'm
City.
not knocking them. If there's four or five
No,
thousand, 4 or 5 thousand people there, then that's
it's
not
actually
bad.
pretty full
If
tonight.
you're
If you look on Twitter now, Fight Oracle just posted he's there, and he posted a picture of the crowd tonight, and it's filling up pretty well. I will say, like ever since their World Series of Fighting days, they look to fill that place regardless of what had. Like when I looked at ticket sales yesterday, it didn't look like many were sold, but they actually have people out there getting people to come in. The tickets are not expensive. They were like $50 a head. So on a Friday night in New York, though, when I was there, I mean, people people like going to New York just to do whatever the fuck is going on. So even if you didn't know about it and you saw, if you're walking, if you're some dickbag from Jersey getting out of the NJ Transit and you walk up to 34th Street and you see the PFL sign and you're with your fucking bro and you're like fist pumping and saying, "Hey, look, fights, bro, want to go watch?" Like that's what happened on Friday night. They packed the house. So it was actually good. The crowd was good. Energy was good. I want to shout out to some other media folk that were there, like Matt Davies Photography, Dylan Rush, who he's got a degree in journalism, but he's on the side of that influencer type of coverage of MMA. But that kid gets a pass because he's actually he puts in the work, and I like his stuff. He's pretty funny too. But like there's quite a few like the new face of MMA media was there. I won't get into it, but there's a couple of guys that are grinding and trying to make something out of it that I have respect for. Um, but yeah, man, the theater. You've been to the theater, right? You went to the weigh-ins
for
when
the
they.
weigh-ins, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's that just they
Hmm.
push out the back and the floor is a little empty because that's where the cage is. VIP seatings on both sides. Um, and it's a good time, man. I mean, I like when they come there. I know they don't come as much because again, they do kind of like want to take care of their fighters most of the time. I know they've pissed off some fighters too, and that's been in the news. Like Kayla Harrison even's been admitted about like that's why she went and fought in Titan FC and the other one during COVID because they wanted to hold her back with $1,000 stipend a month. That's kind of like one of their black marks, but including the Shane Burgos thing and all the stuff that's happened this season. So they're not like none of these promotions are 100% fantastic, but um they did make sure all the fighters got treated the same. Like they all had the media obligations. Everybody, had the red carpet rolled out for them on fight week. That again, it is an obligation. If you're like Elena, you didn't want to do it, but she still did it anyway. But I like what they're doing, and the fights are fun on fight night, man. Everybody's just on fire. So yeah, and tonight's already on the roll too. I was watching the results before we got ready to record. Um, these last few fights for these semifinals look like they're going to be fun.
Yeah, we won't hold any listeners much longer, but because the main card did just start for that, although there is an amateur about to kick off. So if you're listening, you don't have to go anywhere yet. Um, this weekend, right in the middle of the night, well, for me, 2 a.m. Saturday morning, UFC goes to back to Singapore. We don't highlight a bunch of these events that are kind of odd times or on ESPN Plus, but it is Max Holloway, Korean Zombie, which is obviously a fight that, um, I mean, you know, you're gonna watch whether you watch the replay or you watch it live.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna skip that fight.
Mm.
That's a tremendous bout with a lot kind of on the line for both guys. Kind of the career for Korean Zombie, I would say, and then any chance at really another title run uh, for Max Holloway. Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann, weird rematch co-main event, but a fight that you expect not a finish. You expect some blood and guts in that fight. Giga Chikasi and Alex Caceres. Caceres on a nice little run. Chikasi's obviously dangerous top ranked fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Heck of a fight there. And then Aaron Blanchfield from your neck of the woods against 19-2 Talia Santos. That's a hell of a fight. Really will help establish possibly the next title contender at 125 pounds. Junior Tafa, when you get the Tafa guys in there, you're looking at somebody swinging big and hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Chidi and Jaquani on the prelims. I mean, it's actually a really fun card. Like I said, it's 5 a.m. East Coast, 2 a.m. Pacific,
Yeah. It's rough on a
and
Saturday for
and
me.
there'll be replays and stuff through ESPN Plus, obviously. Whereas what you already watch it, so it's not necessarily get up the time, but it is a good card.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I look at the whole card top to bottom, you know, might be setting the alarm for a middle of the night to catch up and time it to catch the last four fights in the night or so.
Yeah.
To, so um, one other thing we want to mention is we were reached out to by a uh, guy on Twitter who's starting his own thing, his own website.
It's
He's
like
got
a
a website.
podcast network, right?
It's a podcast network. He's basically put together a website where people can click on it and see a list of some MMA podcasts. He's got kind of a mix of them. He's got some that are fighters. He's got Arnold Allen. He's got Jack Shore. But it's the Bloody Good Show. Is the website. His handle on Twitter is TBGS Creator Hub. So it's the Bloody Good Show Creator Hub. That's his handle for Twitter. Reach out to him if you're interested in getting
Yeah.
your podcast on there. Didn't charge us anything. Reached out, made it real simple. We sent him some information, and in a matter of hours, he had us on his site, which which obviously helps promote this show, and hopefully we can help promote his site a little bit. And it's I'm pretty impressed with what he put together. So I think if anybody is doing a podcast, big,
Yeah,
small,
man.
or just getting started, reach out to him and see what he can offer you to get on the list. And it can't hurt. Plus, it'll open up a thing. I'm sure we'll become perhaps not coworkers necessarily, but there's some other podcasts on there that you can always kind of combine with, and that's always a good way to get going. We did it early on with some of the guys from Sherdog. We did it with the Last Round podcast. So any chance you get to reach out to other people who are doing the same thing that you're attempting to do, it's
Yeah.
a good way to help grow and you know uh Yeah, anybody that's been through this knows that there's a lot of ups and downs,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to see he's doing this. This is an idea of somebody else from years ago, but that person took it to the extreme and was making it way too complicated. The easiness of just sending him some information, some links, and him helping out is a really cool thing. To have done. So
Yeah.
again, it's the Bloody Good Show. Check it out on Twitter. Check out the website when you get a chance.
Yeah, and I think that wraps us up for this week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we'll have a guest. With me being so busy, it's been hard to book folks, but trying to get back to the regular swing of things as we come out of the summer and into the fall. So should have some stuff lined up for you soon. But in the meantime, it'll be me and Matt as always fucking around on the internet. Matt, your audio. I don't know if Taylor pulled out your plug, but Matt's still trying to do his thing for the.
Now,
There you
all
go.
right, all right. Fans can check out the show on X at Combat Hour, Instagram, Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. Check me out at MMA Hawk on Twitter, on X and Instagram. Check out Ed on X at Carbazol,
I got to change
Carbeerzol on
these things.
Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, our podcast is brought to you weekly by allaccessmma.com. Ed, glad that you enjoyed your time on the road. Catch some rest.
Yeah, hopefully I get another event in by the end of the year. Like
Yeah,
Bellator 300 is definitely on my radar. So
yeah, speaking of that, just a quick thing: if any from Bellator, get your ticket stuff under control. I'm not falling for it again. You haven't sold that many tickets. You're not releasing them all, and you're holding back tickets. Stop that shit. If you want to buy tickets, I got a bunch of people who want to go and go enjoy your show, but I'm not going to buy the crappy seats and then be disappointed when 3 days before you release all the good ones. Stop that shit. I've caught on to it. So, all right, all right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night and enjoy the PFL. Get over to it right now and watch some good action.
Peace.
Good night.